Welcome to the Dork Forest. Jackie and her pals will never bore us. Shameless confessions
about our obsession
will make us laugh and smile. So let's explore the Dork Forest and dork out for a while.
Hi, it's Jackie Cation, and you are listening to The Dork Forest. The website's JackieCation.com, DorkForest.com, TheDorkForest.com if you like a determiner. Let's do the credits. Patrick Brady's going to fix this audio and video. Vilmos works on JackieCation.com, and Mike Ruekberg sang the song with his wife, Sarah. He composed it, and he will sing his version of the Mexican hat dance at the end of this show. Thank you so much for listening to The Dork Forest. Here's a scoop. I'm doing stand-up online. A lot of Zoom shows will eventually go back on the road. Sign up for my email list. It's easy to get off. It's harder to get on than it is to get off. And no harm, no foul. If ever bored, JackieCation.com, sign up for the email list. You'll find out about my weekly Zoom shows and stand up on the road eventually. You may donate to the show if you would like. I would like. Sure, I would. There's PayPal, Jackie at JackieCation.com, and there is a PayPal button on both DorkForest.com and JackieCation.com. And there's Venmo, if you like Venmo, Jackie-Cation, oddly enough. If you have listened to all of the shows, go to dorkforest.bandcamp.com, I think. The Dork Forest has a Bandcamp page. You can listen to a lot of ones that are free from pre-2009 when I started pre-recording. And then there's live episodes that cost me a couple of bucks, so I charge you a couple of bucks. There's also some stand-up. There's a story album that's very exciting there. And other than that, I have a lot of merch in my garage. Feel free to order if you know anybody who doesn't have any CDs or the DVD. And you can follow me everywhere at Jackie Cation. Let's get into the show. Hey, it's Jackie Cation. I am in my living... No, I'm not. I'm in my garage. I can continue to say it, but I'm in my garage. And I am with... Is it Sher? Is it Shlomo Sher?
Shlomo Sher. Yeah.
Shlomo Sher. I am with Shlomo Sher, who has a podcast with my loved one, Andy Ashcraft. So hell has frozen over, and everyone has podcasts now. But Shlomo, you and Andy have a podcast, and it's at Video Game... It's at Ethics and Video... It's Ethics and Video Games is the name of the podcast, right?
Right.
And it's at Video Game Ethics on Twitter and Instagram.
Yep.
And it's... Ethics and Video Games podcast on Facebook. So
Yep.
ethicsandvideogames.com will have links to all of that stuff. And your name is Shlomo Sher, and your co-host is Andy Ashcraft, and you guys talk about ethics and video games, correct?
Absolutely. And it's not what we're going to be talking about today.
It is not. You
Right.
You are on the Dork Forest, and you have a fun dorkdom that I have not had on the show before, which is sandcastles. Which, what on earth? Are you good at them?
I'm not bad. I feel like so I kind of came in this through my wife's family.
Okay.
And I've been apprenticing, though my apprenticeship is over at this point. I've been told. I've graduated.
You're a journeyman.
Sure. I've always wanted to be a journeyman.
There you go.
Damn good title.
So how long have you been making sandcastles?
Okay, I think at this point, so I came into it, and I think the first time we went to New Jersey together. My wife is from Chicago, and sometimes they would go do family vacations at the Jersey Shore to meet other family members. And the first time I came as the guest, as the boyfriend.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
I came in, and the family's about to go to the beach, and her dad started playing slowly on the guitar, and one by one everybody kind of joins in as they're playing. I forgot, like it was some Rolling Stones song, and
what?
I was like,
they're the greatest hippie family in the world.
They are total hippies. Her parents are
awesome.
Total hippies. Right. And I was like, oh my God, this family's awesome. And then they go to the beach and build a sandcastle together. Together.
How many generations? How many people are involved in this thing initially, if I may ask?
Well, in this case, it was my the father, the wife, and my wife and her brother,
Okay.
and a couple of cousins and an aunt. I think we're all participating.
And yourself.
Right.
So that's like 9 people.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Um, and I mean, before this, sandcastles were. I mean, that was a silly thing that kids did. Right.
Poorly. They did them poorly. Yes.
Poorly. Right.
Mhm.
Because you can't do much the way that kids do it, and we never teach our kids life-saving sandcastle skills or any sandcastle skills, right? When kids go and do sandcastle, it's pretty. You've got your molds; they're pretty straightforward. Some people can do some pretty nice things with those molds,
Mhm.
and you can dig holes and tunnels. I mean, that's what kids do, right?
Right.
And every once in a while, I would go and I would see someone on the beach, and I live in LA, so we have a beach. And I would be like, wow, that's a really cool castle. It'll be a castle or a sculpture, and I'll talk about that later.
Sure.
But I've never actually been with anybody that knew how to do anything. And I remember going with them and being just wowed by the kind of stuff that my father-in-law was doing.
What kind of molds did they have? Because I just know cups. Everybody has a
Right.
plastic cup, and then that might be, and you might have a square. You might have a round and a square.
Right. Or you might have something that looks a little more like the tower in a castle, as part of the mold, right? You get a bunch of those for kids, right?
But just sort of round and square is the only ones I know. Is there pointier ones that I don't know about?
Pointy ones would be really hard to do, but I think ones that have like kind of the wall of the castle built into them, or the top. I forgot what those. I think those are called not crenations, turrets maybe. Or something like that.
So there's the straight wall, and then there's the round thing with the pointy thing on top, which or they have like a castle in chess where they have the little slits cut out.
Exactly.
Okay.
Like the little slits. I mean, that's
Turrets.
hard, right?
Yeah.
That's really hard to do those little slits.
Uh-huh.
Right. But they have some where kids have a mold that lets you do that.
Okay.
Right? But those molds never really stick well. So anyway, I saw. I mean, my father-in-law is like he's a professor of like English and visual culture and art.
Okay.
And he knows about like architecture. So
Okay.
he would build the sandcastle and talk about the different architectural parts of it, right? And this is a buttress, and this is a flying buttress, and I thought,
What are the different parts of it? What?
there's
Okay.
different parts, right? So I when I went to their house in Chicago, I saw that their entire house is full of pictures of the family building sandcastles, and like from all over the world.
Right.
Because they travel a lot, and apparently this from what I understand started with when he was a kid in Anaheim, California. His mother made sandcastles and taught him how to make sandcastles, and he taught his kids. And though it sounds like my wife for the most part didn't want to do what daddy wanted and built the sandcastle all the time. Right?
Wow, that's a hell of a rebellion. All right.
But at this point, we're 4 generations in
Sure.
this family with
Sure.
with my son. And that was part of the fun. Like, we'd go to the beach. My son, when we first started doing this, I think my son participated for the first time maybe when he was 2 or 3.
Okay.
And there's little things that kids could do, and
What can a 2 or 3-year-old kid do besides break it?
very, very few things
Okay.
at that age, right?
Now, does your father-in-law sort of delegate? Does he like assign like is he the construction whatever the construction the head construction worker? Is he like that guy?
The way we do it now is kind of we go in it together, and I'm going to talk about all the how you do it and how it all goes, but I think like at this point we recently took a family vacation to San Diego. So they flew down from Chicago, we drove down from LA, and we had a couple of other people, and let's say the 7 of us. we spent pretty much every day in San Diego we got a place on the beach and just spent all day at the beach building a sandcastle.
Okay.
That was our vacation. We
Right.
right.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
dorkdom. That's your dorking out hardcore. You're like seven
Definitely.
people have traveled around the country to a specific, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the way we do it now is, I do mine and he does his, and we're connecting them together.
Oh, okay.
So we're kind of partners at it at this point.
Okay,
know-
so it's parallel play to some extent, where and then you bring them together, and okay,
Right. So, we'll build two big let's say piles. I don't know what to call them at this point. That we're going to work on that are going to be connected, and we know that other things are going to happen as we're all kind of working this together. And someone else, another member of the family, might add something on the side or something in front, and it'll all kind of come together. I think my stepfather has a Zen experience while he's doing it. And
sure.
I'm stoned and listening to the Grateful Dead most of the time for hours at a time while I'm doing it. And some things are happening off to the side. We're in the zone.
Right. So are you digging a hole?
No. So, well, okay. So let me start, I guess, about how you do it, where you do it, right?
What? Yeah, I don't know
because you would think it would be
how
as simple
big they are. I don't know how big they get. I don't know how many different rooms. Are they hollowed? Is it just solid? Talk to me.
All right, so let's see. The one we built in San Diego, we had a lot of time to do it. So usually it's depends on how long we get to do it, and how long we get to do it typically depends on how long my wife can stand being at the beach before I get pulled away.
Right.
But the last one we did, I think the whole compound was probably the highest point was probably 3 feet tall, maybe 4 feet tall, depending on how much because you can go down further. Once you kind of get levels, you can keep going down levels, and then by getting rid of more of the beach. So you can have like these multi-level structures, maybe like 3 to 4 feet high. And probably maybe a radius of about 8 feet. So it's like a big structure.
Right. And that was just one of them, or was that the two that were joined?
Those were several that were joined. Right?
Okay.
So you have essentially different buildings that might have bridges between them, and there might be a courtyard, a pool, a moat. This one incorporated a sculpture that my son did, involving seaweed. That was a part of it, and a garden, and so a bunch of different things could be happening.
Right. It's a complex.
It's a complex, right? And people do things differently. Okay, so let me start at the beginning, okay? Because you would think you could just go to a beach and build a sandcastle.
Yeah.
But it is not that, or you can, but here's the problem. You go to the beach and you start building a sandcastle, and an hour later, the high tide washes away your sandcastle.
So you got to plan. You have to plan where you're putting this thing. Much like when you build anything in real life.
Right. Yeah. You need your geological survey.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
You need an understanding of the weather, right? If you're building a skyscraper someplace where it's really windy, right, you're going to have to figure that wind into how you're doing. And the beach has its own issues. Starting with the tide, which is which is huge, because ideally. So timing really matters. And ideally, you want to go to the beach right at the end of high tide.
Okay.
So the sand is wet and the water is receding. So you have a long time, probably like a good 10 hours before it comes back.
Okay.
If you start right where the sand is wet. And the sand being wet is super, super helpful.
Yeah. Because it packs better, I suppose.
Water makes things stick.
Yeah.
Right. And then you get the type of sand. So some beaches. So when we went to, let's say, to San Diego, we went to Mission Beach in San Diego, which is an interesting kind of stretch of land between a bay and the beach. At the bay, it was impossible to build a sandcastle because the grains were like really big and really big and really crystally. I don't know.
Okay.
There's
They're
like
just hard to pack them. Just too hard to pack
it's
them.
hard
or-
to. It's
Like-
not even packing. It's think of it as clay. This is kind of
So you
similar to clay.
consistency. You need a certain
Consistency.
kind of consistency. Okay.
And like a lot of balls will break apart, right? If you
Mhm.
have like all these kind of big crystals, it'll just break apart. You can't really do much with it. So you want like really like fine sand
Right.
with platelets instead of crystals. I
Okay.
honestly don't really know what that means, but I know
But
when
your
I see it.
father-in-law told you that.
He told me that, right? He told me that a long time ago, and you see the difference with the fine sand. It just
Okay.
it's really amazing, and a certain mixture of clay really helps. But I don't really know how to tell when you have clay in it or not, right?
Right.
I just know sometimes you can carve it and it just feels like you're carving butter, and sometimes you carve it and everything falls apart.
Right. So you're carving it.
It's a sculpture.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, you're
So-
creating a sculpture.
So are you digging it? So you find the sand, you find the right wetness. Do you
Mhm.
dig down or do you build up?
First, you got to build up, then you got to carve it down.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So, but even before that, okay. So there's one more about kind of the when and where, right? The weather too matters, because when it's hot, because water keeps everything going. So when it's hot, it essentially dries up really quickly.
Okay. Fair enough.
So the best weather is like in the 60s.
Wow. So
You
who
know.
wants to hang out at the beach in the 60s for 10 hours? You do. And
I
then
do.
some other people, not as much.
Right.
Okay.
Right. There's always everybody. There's always the people in the wetsuits.
Right.
Right,
Sure.
right.
Right.
But like 60s is still comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Especially and I'm working, I'm sweating.
Right.
know.
You're moving. You're constantly moving.
Right. And so a little bit of cold, right, helps the water stay wet longer, right? Makes it easier to do it.
Mm-hmm.
There's one place that's supposed to be the holy grail of sandcastling.
Where's
Um,
that?
Texas, South Padre Island
What?
is it's near the Mexico border. At some point, we're planning a family
A
trip
destination sandcastle.
there.
Wow. Yes, that's
Yes.
awesome.
And this is apparently a destination. There's people on YouTube who are expert sandcastlers who go essentially give classes in San Padre Island, and people go there for sandcastle lessons. And when you watch those videos on Facebook, it's just amazing the things they can make balls out of sand, like big balls, like a volleyball size ball of sand that is perfectly round.
Wow. In with a mold, obviously, and then they just sort of keep it correct.
I'm trying to remember how they do it. It's actually, I don't know if it's a partial mold. I think you do it partly with your hand, mostly
Okay.
where you're kind of, I think maybe again in the same way that you might make a ball with clay,
Okay.
right? You kind
Yeah.
of how to shape it as a ball, and you can refine it. And they have tools for that, because there's,
There's tools you
There-
can buy, I bet. This sounds like this is definitely, if there's a YouTube channel that's telling you how to make sandcastles, there's definitely somebody's selling those pans where you pan for gold. That's where the
they
real
are.
money is. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it seems that, I don't think the market is big enough for them to make a lot of money from that,
Sure.
but a little bit of money, because there's
Right.
people like me out there.
Yeah.
And
So
it's-
you have purchased tools?
yes.
Has your father-in-law purchased tools?
Yes, though most of our tools, and let's get into the tools.
Yeah.
So, okay, the most important tool you'll need is a trowel,
Okay.
or better yet, several trowels. So trowels is they're kind of like triangular metal things with a handle. I've seen them in I don't know, movies or cartoons, people using them to put cement on bricks when
Right.
building a house.
Are they the scoop ones that you use for gardening or the flat ones you use for cement? Okay.
The flat ones used for cement.
Okay.
Right? And we have a pair of pretty big ones and a pair of pretty small ones. I went to the beach once in Santa Monica and ran into a woman who made a really big lion, beautiful lion sculpture.
Okay.
And I have a tool belt with which is a pencil case essentially,
Okay.
and a bucket full of tools. But
Mhm.
I was like, oh, what tools did you use? And she was like, oh, I just one trowel. So a single trowel could do a lot, right?
Yeah.
And I've never used a trowel for anything else besides sandcastles. Um, but they're super super useful because they have you can cut with them, and
Okay.
you need to be able to cut. And if you take two, you can cut like corners if you put them together. You can cut angles with them. Sharp. Essentially, you could create sharp edges
Okay.
with them, which are
Wow.
really cool. So there's a lot you could do with trowels.
Yeah.
And then you have really the key thing to, instead of a mold. So
Oh.
kids use molds.
Right.
So what we use are essentially buckets. So buckets with the top of the bucket cut out.
So just as more of a cylinder or whatever the shape of the bucket, but no
Right.
bottom.
That's right. No bottom.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So right. So the bottom, and we have various shapes and sizes, right?
Sure.
So we can have a round, like Home Depot, right, is where I get all this stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I got the 5-gallon bucket that's round, and the 10-gallon bucket that's round, and the 10-gallon back bucket that's a rectangle, and the 15-gallon back bucket. I've seen on South Padre Island people use like actual trash, like legit.
Oh, like full on giant.
Yes.
Okay.
That they have to use, I think, little carts, not your regular beach carts, but little motorized vehicles, I think, to bring to the shore or something. I mean, to make something enormous, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But part of the problem, you can't just do you got to use then vegetable oil to slick up the inside of these things.
Okay, wait a minute. So you're bringing okay, vegetable oil.
I got a spray bottle of vegetable oil.
Okay, makes sense.
Otherwise, if you just, let's say so what you do with these things is, right, you put them down with the narrow side up, and that part is cut, and you essentially what you end up creating a foundation below that, and the foundation below that essentially is sand that's really packed, and it's very wet, so it's saturated. And then on top of that, you put like the bucket, and you kind of put sand over the ledges so water can't leak, and you start pouring water in there until it just starts filling up with water. And then you pour, essentially you put you take the shovel and put sand in there. And
so first you fill it up with water, and then you add the sand.
Right. Right.
Okay, so it's super wet. Okay.
Right. So that's the idea, and the nice thing about it is, mostly if it already have water in it, the water just takes your sand and gets it wet and disperses it evenly.
Okay.
Right. So you don't have like clumps, and everything is wet. Once you have that done, you essentially you dig out the edges at the bottom, and then you've got to lift it. And this is where the grease comes in. Without the vegetable oil, I mean, this is incredibly heavy sand.
Okay, because you've soaked it to death, and then you've packed it super dense.
Right. And if it's attached to the sides of the bucket,
which is why you sprayed it before you did the water. Okay.
And then it just slides right off.
Okay.
Really nice. And then you've got a really dense, beautiful bunch of sand in a beautiful either circle or
trapezoid or any shape, right?
Yeah. I have a nice octagonal one
nice.
that's pretty cool. And now you can work with it. Right. So now and that's how you get your like big buildings, right?
Okay. So the main structure are those ones.
Right.
And just one, or do you do like several to sort of build on top of?
on how much time and energy you have. And for me, one of the toughest things about sandcastling to decide is, do I do details or do I do more structures?
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I like details, but I could take like 3-4 hours on one building and then you never get anything else.
Right. Are you making Petra, or are you making, like Dubai? Right. It's are you going for height and breadth, or are you going for like little scrolly kind of,
Right.
Indiana Jones?
I should make Petra. I've been actually, I actually aware if for those
Have
of you
you
watching the
been to
video,
Petra?
I have, and in fact, this thing that I wear on my neck is an Athenian owl that I got in Petra.
Oh.
From a caveman. And I like saying caveman because in Petra, essentially, people lived there in the caves in Jordan
Yep.
until the 1970s when they made it a national park. And then they moved all the people to this little town right outside Petra, but they still allowed them to sell stuff. And I bought this from a dude who was born in a cave in Petra.
That's awesome, because
Yeah.
I want to go into the cave in Petra.
It's pretty cool.
It's one of the coolest things that I've. Okay, anyway, go ahead. But yeah, you could make Petra.
You can, right? So, and there's lots of things that you can, if it depends on what you want to do. And notice we're talking about sandcastle. Why castle, right? Petra is not a castle, right? Nope. Petra, people lived in Petra, right? It has this impressive statues in the beginning. You can make Luxor, I guess, right? In the same kind of vein. Or you can make, my father-in-law every once in a while makes an Aztec style pyramid.
Okay.
Right?
Oh, he likes the step pyramids?
Yeah.
Another
steps,
pyramid
right?
that I would also enjoy seeing. Yes, I have seen no pyramids. It is the great regret. Anyway, continue.
Go. I have in the Pyramid of Gaza when I was 21.
You've seen pyramids too. God, yes.
Even
I'm
though
talking to Shlomo Sher, by the way. Everybody should go to ethicsandvideogames.com and Video Game Ethics on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you very much. Continue.
Thank you. So when I went, I was 21, and they had rules posted on the, when you go into the Pyramid of Giza, you can go down where the sarcophaguses
sarcophaguses are.
Yes, right, used to be, and they have like signs that say don't go in there. And of course, being 21, I went in there so my friend could take a picture.
Yes.
This was like in 1994, and I got mugged later on that trip. And I lost all my photos, including the photo of me like lying in the Pyramid of Giza, which was such a cool photo to have.
Oh my God, what assholes we were. You know that we climbed over the fence at the Oracle at Delphi?
Oh.
In the night, and we're on the altar and had a bottle of wine. And I was like, hey, jackass, there's a reason that says no. Anyway, because if everybody did it, there would no longer be any ruins. It would be completely trashed. Anyway, so, yes.
But it's so cool.
It was really cool.
Yes.
It was very cool. And it was the Canadian guy when we were standing on the altar, and the Mexican woman that I was traveling with was going to move a rock so she could prop a candle up. And the Canadian guy, we were with a Canadian guy and a South African guy, and the Canadian guy goes, hey, it's not a construction site. Don't move any of the rocks. And and it says get off the altar. So we got off the altar.
Right.
So Canadian guy, voice of reason again. Anyway, so castles versus Petra.
Castles. Right. So when Obama won the election, being a family from Chicago, they went to the beach in Chicago with some family friends and their kids and built the White House.
Right? Oh, cool.
And that was I was really impressed. I thought it was a really well done White House.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you can do stuff like that. Some people build traditional sandcastles, medieval that you can imagine. Some people do your sculptures that the mermaids, the lions, whatever it is, that trucks I've seen, trains.
Oh, right. Yeah, you could build anything, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, you just need a big pile. Right. That's, the woman that I talked to that made the lions, she said, I spent an hour and a half making a pile. All you need is to take a shovel and use that shovel for an hour and a half.
And just do a lot of digging and then
you're
Wait.
creating a big pile,
Oh.
and you're getting it all wet. So a
Okay.
big pile and you're getting it all, and that's the key, getting it all wet. So it's a lot of trips. It's hard on your body to do, to do all that, right?
Right. Physically, it is. I'm sure it's like any shoveling. I mean,
Right.
essentially, you're shoveling sand,
Right.
which is one of the jokes of the worst job in the world is to shovel sand for a living. But you're like, no, I'm doing it because I want to make a castle or a building or a train set. Because I have actually on Venice Beach seen people make like the Sphinx.
Right.
And then they'll put like a hat out, and you're like, "Cool Sphinx. Here's a quarter, or here's $1."
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So those are the real classic, right? And they're
Yeah.
doing it specifically so it'll be something you recognize. But then you have people who are just going out there. It seems that every time I've gone out with a plan, sometimes I try to draw out what I'm gonna do. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I have ideas, right? I want to try out my ideas. I've never done this. Let's try this. And like 90% of what I plan to do goes out the window the minute like I, start making
Right.
the first building and kind of end up going with the flow. And I guess we'll do something else. And something new always happens anyway.
Yeah. It's the best laid plans. And I wonder if there are architects who do it, who literally like plan stuff like that.
That would be cool. I mean,
Yeah.
or or people who's just like architecture, like
Right. Hobbyists. Yeah.
right, hobbyists that think in terms of I don't know enough architecture to kind of think in those terms, but my father-in-law does.
Right. Like
Right.
is he kind of a draftsman where he kind of draws it out and
No,
No, he-
the experience is totally different for him. He doesn't even well, let me get through the tools first.
Okay. Yeah,
And
yeah.
then- and
Let's
let
get
me
back
get
to
to
the
it.
tools. Yeah.
So okay, so shovel, obviously, big shovel.
Big
right?
shovel.
A lot of stuff. Most of the tools we use are beside the buckets and the trowels are sculpture tools.
Okay.
The kind that you would use for sculpting clay or other kinds of sculpture,
Huh.
right? Because most of what once you've got your big pile ready, you're sculpting. I mean, that's really kind of what you're doing for most of it, right?
Okay.
And people could just get those online for just sculpting tools. Right?
Okay.
And that's all that. And then
Just
you
chisels and different
no.
cutting.
Not for sculpting, let's say stone. right?
Okay.
But more like for sculpting clay.
Okay. What do those
Yeah.
look like? What are those?
The best ones are so typically they're things like, let's say, might cut, but the best things are like loops of steel, different kinds of loops of steel that essentially take away strips of sand or strips of clay. So let's say I have a column maker that's kind of like it's a little stick, and on it has almost like a U-shaped thing where each part of the U is kind of like it's thin steel, and each one of the U's cuts like a column in the sand, and if you drag it down, you get columns.
Okay.
All right.
What?
And
Yeah. Oh,
it's-
wait a minute. Let me share this and tell me if this is what I'm looking at.
let's see.
And is it like that item?
Yep, it's so I have a bunch of these. In fact, the one where your cursor is on,
Yeah.
the one to the right of it is sorry, the other one, the other right, my right.
Okay.
Two more.
Go
No.
this way or that way? There we go.
The other way. Not that way, the other way.
Okay.
More to your left, my right. That's the other way. Jesus.
That's what I've
Okay.
got. Okay, it's okay.
Any which way, is one of my favorites.
Yes.
So yeah, you can see here, right, how essentially you're taking little bits of sand off, and
They're
then
tiny.
they can be. So you want different sizes for different things.
Yeah.
Right. The tiny ones really allow you to do details.
Right.
Right. And details are great. I mean, this is another one of the things that really make a big difference between doing a kid's sandcastle and, like something complicated, right? You can have a lot of details, right? So you can have details that allow you to do windows in complex ways.
Okay.
that allow you to do let's say crenellations. Crenellations are going to be those things on the towers that we talked about where you have the gaps.
Okay. Oh, it's
Right?
like where the people would shoot the arrows
Right.
through.
Where the
Okay.
people would shoot the arrows through. Right.
That has a real word. Anyway, but yes. So you could make those, and you're carving out the whole piece, right? You're not just doing a drawing in the. You're doing both, obviously.
It depends on what, right? So
Yeah.
let's say windows, I end up drawing the windows because
Yeah.
that's too fine. But the crenellations, right? I can cut the crenellations out.
Yeah.
Right. And like windows in general, I can cut a window out with something that is that has a loop. And the nice thing about the loop is it goes right through and the sand kind of exits, as opposed to a scoop where right you're going to meet resistance eventually because you're maintaining it in the scoop.
The loop is hollow, so you can actually get in deeper. Is that the ideal? Okay.
Yes, and you can get in deeper. That's another one, and which is especially important if you're let's say I'm doing a castle and I want a gate to my castle. I want my gate to go through the castle, of course. Right. And so it's so much easier with a loop than let's say something that's solid to do that.
So have you made like sort of a tunnel through a castle? Have you done? Yeah,
that's the norm. Yeah, that's
the norm. Okay.
Yeah, we almost always do that. Sometimes in our last in our San Diego trip, my stepfather, we had a round one, and he managed to create 8 tunnels through it that essentially all connected together in the middle in an empty space. So we took out space from the top
to create sort of a garden.
To create kind of what you would imagine to be a garden, except where you would have vines on it, but we didn't have vines to put on it, right? But where it's hollow and you have holes from 8 different sides that connect with the hollowness. That was he was very proud of it. It was very, very
It would
cool.
collapse. Without collapsing, he's created 8 tunnels and then a hole coming down from the center where the magical well would be. And and then it didn't collapse.
Right. They all meet. So they're not just tunnels on the ground, right? I mean, they're like they're the entire thing for most of the height is a window or whatever it would be. Right. So you could do a lot if you've got the finer tools to do it. Right.
So is it the problem getting with those tools, trying to get the sand out without knocking anything over?
Yes. And there's another tool that's really great, which is specifically made for sandcastling, which I did buy from one of the sandcastling people. That's kind of like a thin piece of metal that's flat, that's maybe about 5 inches. That's very, very flat and has sharp sides, and you hold it with a handle. And you can cut with it, but you could also pull dirt with it. Right. So you can get dirt out. It's incredibly useful for lots and lots of other of things. It's super fine. It has edges. It's just
Did you get one for your father-in-law?
I did, actually.
That's an excellent gift. That's an excellent gift for a guy like him. So this is fascinating. Wow.
And then you got things like when you have a castle wall, how do you do those walls? How do you do the stones? Yeah. And a mechanical pencil is essentially kind of, a mechanical pencil, and you're just drawing the stones, and then you get a straw, and a straw is another really, I use a bamboo straw. Because they don't get messed up.
Yeah.
But then you can blow away the sand, and you get the fine lines for like the stones.
Okay, so you're just drawing in the design of the brick or the stone, and then you're blowing on it with a straw to get rid of the excess sand, so it has that texture.
Right. And my 7-year-old son can do that.
Sure.
Right? So this is something that I could pass on to and it looks beautiful. Right, if it's done this way.
Of course.
And then we have one thing that we used to have, that we have what we call the Terminator, which is one of those square ice cream scoops.
Yep.
That the one that like Thrifty used to have.
Yeah.
Right. They're great. They're just, I think they cost like $70 or something because, how many people buy that kind of stuff.
Right. It's weird. Yeah.
But you can essentially use that, in a bucket with mud in it to essentially do square pieces, right? You can use that for crenellations. You can use it for
those
lots of
turret
things.
things. Yeah. To put
Right,
those,
right.
Yeah.
And then we have a piece of wood.
Okay.
And we use that for stairs typically. A piece of wood essentially is just a simple piece of wood, even like a little one. I have one that's 2 by 6 inches, and another one that's has a handle on it that's maybe a foot by 5 inches.
Wait, that helps you carve out the stairs, or you create it as stairs?
You press the sand down with the wood.
Oh, okay.
A little bit at a time to get stairs.
Okay.
And that's another thing that kids can do.
Oh, right. Make the stairs.
Yeah, it's an easy one for kids to do. It's a really easy one kind of pick up. And once they're done with it, you can use the trowels to carve out the edges of the stairs.
Right.
So now you have this beautiful staircase that essentially, I don't want to say it's hanging, but it's, it's on its own. It's separate. It's not just a bunch of sand around it with stairs, right?
Right. Have you ever tried to make a spiral staircase? That would be very difficult, I think.
You can have it go around the castle, let's say.
Yeah.
Right? Which is
that'd be neat.
Yeah, it's not that hard, especially if you first make it and then you cut the castle around it.
Okay.
Right?
That makes sense, actually, if it's the first thing you do, because then you can plan it. Okay.
Right. So you've got your mound, and let's say you've got your castle and you've got a gate, and you want like you want this to go around the hill that you're doing to the things at the bottom, right? Then you can do the stairs, and then you can carve out the ledge, and then it looks like the stairs are on the ledge, right? Like on a mountain kind of thing. And that's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay. And then there's the only other thing I think we use is glue sometimes.
Oh, really? Like Elmer's? Like just normal?
Yes, like
glue?
Elmer's glue. So we always forget about it. But I've only been in one sandcastle contest ever. And
what? There's contests.
There's contests.
Of course there's contests.
Never been to one in California, but we went to one in Asbury Park in New Jersey.
Okay.
We just happened to be there on vacation when they happen to have the sandcastle contest there. So we entered. We made it to the local paper as the picture for the sandcastle.
Ooh.
We had a great castle, but we lost out to people who did more like sand sculptures.
Okay.
Right.
Send me that picture of that sandcastle that was in the paper if you have it.
I don't even know if we have it anymore. I wonder
gosh.
if we have it. It seems like a family treasure. We should have it
yes,
somewhere.
You should definitely have it as a family treasure.
But
frame it.
But at the time I was like, how are these people doing these sandcastles that never seem to fall apart? And I was told that they have spray bottles where they take some glue and they mix it up with water. So they dilute it some, and then they spray it on their castles, and the glue keeps the sand together.
It's the old spitball. That's what we're talking about. That's the old baseball trick. And then all of a sudden it's a curveball. I get it.
A little stickiness slider. Is that what those were?
Curves like sliders, right? And you could get like I learned that on a previous episode of the Dork Forest. Anyway,
right.
So
you must learn a lot to this thing.
I do, and I retain only a little of it as we go along, but I do retain something from everybody. So,
if we ever have you and Andy out to build a sandcastle with us, we'll see how we'll see if we can apply this.
I'm not particularly beach people either, but I'll come and eventually find a coffee shop, so that'll be great.
All right.
That's outstanding. I'm talking to Shlomo Sher, by the way, and he has a podcast called Ethics in Video Games, and it's ethicsandvideogames.com, and Video Game Ethics at Video Game Ethics on Twitter and Instagram. And he does that podcast with my loved one, Andy Ashcraft. Thank you very much. Let's get back into it. So the glue, that feels like cheating. Is there any kind of rules or no?
We've never used glue, though I've wanted to. We just forget about it. Yeah. I mean, it makes your structure stay.
Right.
right? Is it?
Can it beat the tide? I don't think so.
It cannot beat the. Nothing can beat the tide, and this is part of the art of sandcastling to deal with the tide.
Right, because eventually it will get washed away, right?
Yeah, it's a special kind. It's special because of that in some way, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I mean, so what we do essentially now that we got all this thing, right? We got all our tools. We built the foundation. We got our big structure, and now essentially we work top to bottom.
Okay.
Right? So right, you can't do the bottom before you do the top, because then when you do the
Okay.
top, it's going to mess up the bottom.
That's right. It's like
Mhm.
when you clean from the top, bottom, you do the floors last.
Right. Otherwise,
Nancy
everything
Cation.
will fall down to the floor. To the
Right,
floor.
then you have to
Right.
clean the floor again. So
And
top
center
down,
to
what do you do?
and center to outward. Right.
Center to outward. Okay.
Right. Otherwise, we start, and this is a lot of times a challenge with, because kids might want to do one thing outside your castle, but your castle needs to spread out,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you built a big castle, but okay, what's going to come next? And the castle is also at the top because you built it higher, because you make a foundation to build it higher, and then you can go down from it, and down you could have, let's say other steps, or maybe other smaller buildings that might
Sure.
connect to, or a pool, or gardens of various kinds, or
You got to have a
or
village that supports the castle.
where the
Yeah,
peasants going to live, right?
exactly. There are
Right,
serfs. Yes.
right. Right. And eventually, and I really like mandalas type things, to do. So sometimes we might have a castle, and then my wife is really good at making faces, in like sand sculpture faces.
Okay. That's neat.
So we might have like there's a castle, but then around it there's a whole thing like a mandala with different kinds of faces in them, and different kinds of carvings that go into that area.
Okay. That's
Yeah,
neat.
and you're going to have arches connecting the different buildings, and terraces, and bridges, and moats, and buttresses, which are essentially going to be helping to hold up the castle. Right?
Okay.
And
so that it's sort of it's at an angle, right?
right,
Buttresses, yeah.
right. And flying buttresses, which means you got a hole in them. So
Okay,
you can
that's
have like
fun.
a road through them. So we often have those, and again, you can have them in multiple levels. And when you get multiple levels, because this is the thing about sand, right? You could just keep cutting away at the sand,
Yep.
right? You could just keep digging deeper, and you've got lots of potentials.
Sure, sure. What are some of your favorite ones that you've done?
Of
I mean, everyone has a phone now, so they can take a picture of their favorite castles. But do you guys, or do you just sort of let it be, man?
Most, I feel like I did one early on that was kind of based on what I think is called either the Great Zimbabwe or the Great Timbuktu, which is kind of like an African style building with lots of holes. I think it's Timbuktu from Mali.
Okay.
I just saw pictures of it at some point, which is kind of like square buildings with a lot of holes get poked in them, and I thought that was really cool. But I feel like I like patterns. I like just putting a lot of patterns in my castle. I'm not as much into castle elements. Like I'll have windows, I'll have columns, I'll have the gate, I have it all carved out nice.
This thing?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's kind of neat.
Except instead of those things sticking out, I made them with holes.
Okay. Instead of outies, you went with innies?
Yeah, innies. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Right. And sometimes things that look a little Aztec-y.
Okay.
I guess that I've done, but it seems to be a little different every time, right? And
right. Yeah.
And it's also, and then you've got the decorations of whatever you got around.
Okay, so you built the structure from the center out,
right?
As high, or if there's a hole, and then there's decorating.
Yeah, if it's around, right?
Yeah.
In my opinion, undervalued in sandcastles, because yet another thing. So seashells, flags, seaweed, little people would be fun if I had some.
Sure.
If something breaks, which it almost always does, because we try to push, you try to push it. and eventually things break,
Yeah.
you can turn it into a ruin.
Oh,
Especially right, so it's
nice.
like an old ruined castle, and decorations are really great there, especially
Okay.
there, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then you get the kids, right? So
Yeah.
anytime you build a sandcastle at the beach, there's always kids that come around and look at the sandcastle and want to know if they could help with the sandcastle. And
Yeah.
it's also a really nice thing to do with, to do
Community,
with
man.
kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
and it's a great way to. I bet you it's a great way to meet other families that are out in the other people that are out at the beach, just going, "What on earth are you doing? This is so awesome."
It is, though. I feel weird about it. It's
Do you
nice.
put the kids to work though? Do you ever put the strangers to work?
I sometimes I'm
Or is it yours?
I'm
Uh,
some things I'm just scared, right? I mean, you're scared. I think of what my son can do.
okay.
And my favorite thing right now is to give my son his own castle to work on
Oh,
next to my
yeah,
castle.
it's your
Right.
castle. That's right.
Right.
You're like, please don't break my castle. I'm scared
Yeah.
you're gonna break my castle.
I
Fair
mean,
enough.
I'm
Fair
working
enough.
on this for like 3, 4, 5 hours.
Right. This is a real So,
Right.
no, I respect that you want to help. I got to put you to work over here. Let me get you started.
Right.
So you get
Right.
your son started at a castle that then you can join.
Right. And we
Yeah.
can join it. So it's still cool. And the kids can do a lot. Right? So
Yeah.
seawalls are always important. What if the tide's coming? We need a seawall, and seawalls can just look cool.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And do you let them do you as bait or as bribery do you let them kind of use a tool?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
just like, go build the seawall so that we can protect it a little bit longer from the sea, and then get to build a nice big wall, and then you're like, now here's some stuff you can. That's cool too. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. I mean, if they build a seawall, now we can draw on that seawall with that mechanical pencil, right?
Right?
To give it stones.
Mhm.
We can use the trowel to cut it so it looks really nice and
Yep.
straight.
Mhm.
Right. We can on the other side of the seawall, we could build a moat for the castle that the kids are really great at.
Yep.
Tunnels are always fun.
Super
right?
fun as long
Can
as
al-
the wall is strong enough. And
Right.
yeah.
Or we can let's say we got a castle, there's a road leading out of the castle, and it's always fun to have tunnels go under the road.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
There's a dungeon that could be made. I still don't know what a dungeon exactly is, but it could be whatever the kid wants it to be.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. It's usually just a basement where bad things happen. That's the definition of a dungeon, Shlomo.
Sure, a basement where bad things happen.
Yeah,
Yes.
because nobody's. It's not an extra room where you put the foosball table. That's a finished basement. A dungeon is an unfinished basement, which usually has chains on the wall, and then someone usually has died there. There's
Well,
where the bad guys. Yeah.
Yeah, we're in LA, so there's I guess almost no basements. So
Almost no basements.
if
Yeah.
if it wasn't for these damn earthquakes, we could get ourselves some good dungeons.
There would be dungeons. There would
Yeah.
be cellars.
Yeah.
Talk to me about this
Um,
We have about 10 minutes left. Talk
Right.
to me about the sculptures.
Well, the sculptures can be kind of anything, right? People can make I've seen really nice, like modern looking almost like modern homes that are really geometrical.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But they're doing kind of geometrical sculptures, and I think those are really neat, where you're just
Like a
kind of
Frank Lloyd Wright building. And which are those sort of more glass and steel kind of modern looking buildings.
I guess I'm thinking about buildings with like sharp angles.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Let's say,
yeah,
right,
that's him.
right, where with Frank Lloyd Wright, I think he gets into right. It really goes along with the surroundings, and
He does like to. Yes, my apologies. Yes,
Right.
but what I was wondering though is anyone taking like a tube
right,
of sand and making like outside of your awesome structure tiny sculptures, like taking their little
Mm.
tiny tool and making like the Venus de Milo or like that.
my wife kind of does that, but not that fine, because it's
Yeah.
easier actually for those kinds of things. It's easier to just make drip sculptures.
What's
So you get your bucket with some sand, and you get a bunch of sand in your hand, and it's wet and it's dripping.
Yep.
And you can essentially, and I usually shake my hand a little bit
Mm-hmm.
because that like gets the splatter effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can create like trees. Trees is the easiest thing that we normally
Sure.
do,
Sure.
right? So you can make a bunch. So let's say we have a road and there's a bunch of trees lining that road,
Oh, that's awesome.
leading up to the castle. Or I like the castle normally as a topper of some kind, and
Okay.
I like using drips at the top to kind of do additional interesting design things. But so drip is another kind of those things where you could do things that look like statues,
Right.
and then it's. But besides that, my wife, who's a much better artist than me, can she like more like puts things together, like we'll make a mound and we'll carve faces into it.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. She's
Right.
doing the relief, like more of a something in like a face in relief in the mound.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Or right, I mean, yes, stuff like that. It's all kind of experimentation,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's all kind of experimentation at this point.
Yeah.
And it really kind of depends what people want. I have it in my mind at some point to go like with a bunch of like pieces of wood that are kind of long and thin and would allow you to do things that you couldn't otherwise do with the regular physics of sand,
Okay.
right? Because they're being held by wood, by a wood plank in some way,
Right, right.
right?
Oh, and sort of pack the sand around the wood?
On the wood.
On
So
the wood,
like
yeah.
so you have like the sand jutting out over the air,
Yep.
and it looks like it's just how is that happening? But it's being held by wood.
Right, right.
Right.
Because I wonder
Right.
about other structures. Like I've never also had someone who builds card houses.
Right.
When you put playing cards together, and then I remember we used to do that. I don't know if that's still anything anyone's. I mean, someone must be doing that. I bet
Oh
you
yeah.
there's a YouTube channel, that rabbit hole, that's happening.
Every once in a while I see someone on Reddit live doing that. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah.
Um
So yeah.
well, so I guess
In summation, Shlomo, talk to
in,
me.
in summation. Well, okay, so let's part of it is kind of it's one of the weird things I think about building sandcastles is that every once in a while like we get together and as a family and we might like build with my son like a Lego structure or or something like that, right? But the thing about the sandcastle it's weird is that you build it and it's gonna it's gonna fall apart,
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah.
And
When you buy a Lego model, you know that you can keep it and you can take it apart and put it back together and take it apart, put it back together, or just glue it together and have it forever, Millennium Falcon style.
right,
Yeah.
right. And you could put it on the shelf, right?
Yeah.
You can, right? With nothing else I've ever built, you just kind of know that it's gonna disappear.
Right.
That this is faded. It's my stepfather, my father-in-law thinks that this is essentially, he calls it beauty and fun without purpose,
Okay.
right? Because you're not right. You're supposed to purely delight. He's a theorist. You're purely delighting in the presence. And the way he likes to do it, which is he mostly while he's carving, he's playing with the shadows. Because for him, a lot of this has to do with where's the sun at? What kind of shadows are you getting? And he's carving into the shadows to essentially play around with the shadows.
Wow. Yeah.
And for me, I was like, wait a minute, but the sun's going to move.
Yeah.
And then you're going to get different shadows. Are you planning for that? And he's like, no. This is an art of the present.
That is an excellent lesson.
It's interesting though. For
Yeah.
me, I'm like, but I want a building that makes sense and is complete.
Right. You want a full building.
I want a full or for but I really admire this ability to be like, I'm just gonna play with the shadow. But I think
I admire all of you for doing this thing that is so finite, that is so, well, it is, you live in the moment, you have a really good time for 4 to 6 to 10 hours, and then you go to bed, you go to dinner, you come back the next day, and it's probably, there's just a ruin or it's gone, right?
almost always it's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a few hours later, it's gone. And then it's, and we've never gone, I think 10 hours. I think we did do 6 hours.
Yeah.
Right? But the minute you leave, you're like, okay, what are the kids that pass by going to do to it?
Oh,
Right.
right. And there's the people, and people ruin all things. But there's just the wind,
Right.
and there's the water, and it will, and the sun will dry it out, and it'll
The sun
crumble
will-
easier.
Yeah, the sun will dry it out. The wind will come. The water is rising.
Hmm
And eventually, there's been times where I just kind of sit down and watch it get eaten
Oh, really?
by the sea.
Yeah.
Just accepting that you made something that you put like hours of effort into is just going to be gone is itself an interesting part of the experience.
That's so beautiful. I have, as per usual, I like to bring it down to earth by asking 2 questions. 3, actually. What are your favorite beaches here in Los Angeles that you like to do this at?
Definitely, we found of all the beaches we've gone to, Venice Beach,
Okay.
just south of the Washington Pier.
Okay.
Has been by far the best, and it's amazing. Like a mile north of that in Santa Monica, where we normally go, where my sister lives, the sand is incredibly different. Right?
Oh, that's fascinating.
So,
Second question. Where is the parking okay? How's the parking? It's just paid parking, $10, $20, something like that?
They keep raising it. It's now $16. There's some parking in the street around, but not a whole lot. But at least the parking is very close to the beach. It does make it very easy to go to the beach.
Right, because you got to haul stuff. That's my last.
You need a wagon.
Oh, you need a wagon. Okay,
A
last
wagon
question.
can really help. Yeah.
Do you have a portable umbrella? Do you have any kind of shade that you create? For the taking a break.
I don't take a break.
All right, you don't take a break.
Oh, sorry.
But others might.
We have.
You got to wear a hat. You do.
We just never bring it because when we take a break, we go boogie boarding.
Okay. Oh, you just go in the water.
And then we're back at Sandcastle.
All right, fair enough. Oh my God, Shlomo, this has been so great. It has been an hour, and I cannot tell you how much I've enjoyed this hour of conversation. Thank you so much for doing the Dork Forest, man.
Thanks for having me.
Everyone, you can get in on the ground floor. It comes out on Tuesdays, same day the Dork Forest does. They're only 15 episodes in, so you could get in and listen to the first 15 hours for it's about an hour. Is that how long the show is?
An hour, a little bit less than that. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, nice. And if you go to ethicsandvideogames.com, and you can follow them on Twitter and Instagram at Videogames and Ethics. Thank you, Shlomo Sher, for doing the show.
All right. Thanks, Jackie.
And what I always say to the Rangers, take care of each other out there.
My hat, my hat, my hat. They're dancing around my hat. My hat, my hat, my hat. Well, what do you think of that? If it looks like a Mexican hat dance and it sounds like a Mexican hat dance, it's most likely a Mexican hat dance. So take off your hat and let's dance.
Yay! Oh my God. Why don't we just call that as the end of the show?